Hey everybody, this is Maria Clark at Sweet Willow Designs and welcome to my studio. Today we are going to marry up two of my favorite art materials, acrylic fluid paint and polymer clay, to make this really fun summery necklace. Let's get started. For this project we're going to use clay and a couple of colors of fluid acrylics and ink and a Krylon 18 karat gold Krylon pen, a variety of beads to match the colors of clay and your string. Then we'll use some string and some jewelry findings. I have these templates, these cool tools templates. You don't need to use that. You could use a paper template. And let's go ahead and get started by making our Skinner blend. We'll first prepare our sheet of clay, and I've just got these are rolled out to the #1 setting on my pasta machine. And we're going to do a Skinner blend. So just a basic Skinner blend where I'm going to offset the diagonal cut through both these sheets of clay, and then I will double them up and get them positioned so that I can start the Skinner blend. So just put those two sheets together and match up the diagonal, and then make sure that the seam is pretty well adhered so that when it goes through the pasta machine you won't have any trouble with it breaking apart. So just kind of push those together a little bit, front and back. Make sure that you don't have any air bubbles. We'll go ahead and put that through the pasta machine, and we'll do a traditional Skinner blend and just keep pushing that through the pasta machine, folding and putting it through the pasta machine until you get this really pretty blended sheet of clay. Now I will take the acrylic paints, and these are Deco Arts Media fluid acrylics. They're just beautiful paints, and this is the teal hue. And I'll just put a little drop in my palette, and then the cadmium orange hue, and put a couple of drops in. Now this is fluid acrylic, so it may be fluid enough. I did add a little bit of water to mine in order to make it flow, because we're actually going to be blowing on this, and we want it to really move well over the sheet of clay. So I've got my color mixed up, and I'll start with the teal, and I'm using a straw, just dropping a little droplet on that sheet of clay and then using a straw to blow it around so that I get a nice interesting pattern. Now, one thing about the straw is I am using a cocktail straw because it's a smaller stream of air. If I were to use a regular straw, it would be too much air pushing through that, and I wouldn't have as much control over it. Now I did notice that I diluted that paint a little bit too much, so don't over dilute. You want it to move easily over the sheet of clay, but you don't want it to be too watery. So I did put a little bit more paint in there, and I'll just keep dropping the paint on and using my straw to blow through it to get this sort of spidery pattern, this bloom on the clay. And I think it's really fun to see how it moves. You can control it a little bit, but you can't control it entirely. And I really love those little spidery veins that come out, those little feathers that come out from the droplet of clay, or the droplet of ink. So just go ahead and keep dropping some of that paint on your sheet of clay and blowing it around. We're going to do this in a number of layers, so don't worry if this first layer isn't perfect. We're going to have an opportunity to add more to it and add more texture and interest. So just keep blowing that around and adding more paint as you need to. You don't want to cover up the whole sheet because, as I said, we're going to be layering on top of this, so you want a bit of negative space here so that you can fill it in with some of the other colors. And just sort of blow that around. You don't want big globs, but you do want to have these little feathers, this feathery look to it's like a little bit of a splash on the clay. Now I've let that first layer dry, and I'm ready to put my second layer on. And with this layer I'll be using the cadmium orange hue. And I'll go ahead and drop some of that on. You can see this is a bit thicker than the first than the teal that I used, and I'll just keep blowing that. I've tried lots of different tools to blow the clay around. I've used straws, but I also used some canned air, and the canned air was just too much for such a small sheet of clay. So I found that using this cocktail straw was really perfect for the size of sheet of clay that I'm using. So just keep blowing that and see how pretty that is starting to give you some really nice effect here. And we'll just keep dropping paint and blowing it around. This is the second layer that we're putting on here. I think it's so much fun to be able to use the paint, the fluid acrylics on top of the clay. This is not a new technique. Polymer clay artists have been doing this for a long time, but with the advent of so many new paints that are on the market, it's really fun to pull out this technique and see all the beautiful colors and textures and weight of paint that you're able to have here. And the acrylic works perfectly with the clay. They're both polymer type medium. So just keep dropping some on and blowing that around. And I think I'm going to just do a couple of more drops on here to get a little bit more coverage, but you can see that I'm not covering up the first layer, I'm just adding to it and hopefully enhancing it a little bit. So I'm just looking to see where I might want to add a little bit more or blow a little bit more. And I think it's starting to take shape. It's not exactly what I'd like to see, but we're getting there. So I will let that dry. So now I've got 2 layers on and dry, and I'm just going to go back with my teal and start overlayering. And the various paints, the layers of paints are going to start to overlap one another and start to give you a really cool organic look. So I'm really liking the way that's starting to overlay. Isn't that pretty, the way that's coming together? Getting a lot of really neat texture and interest here. Now I'm going to add a little bit of metallic with this ink. This is a Liquitex ink. It's a gold ink, and it's a gorgeous ink. These Liquitex metallics are just beautiful, and they give a really nice pop of shine. So I'm really liking that. So I was just trying to break that up a little bit, and now I'm just going to blow. Isn't that gorgeous? The way that just starts to shimmer over the other colors, and it'll give a really nice metallic look. So like we did with the others, I'm just layering it on and blowing through that cocktail straw to get the feathering and the spidering, and just keep adding it across the sheet of clay. And I'll add another one down here. This, you can tell that the different viscosities of the paint give you a different effect as you blow on it. But I really love the addition of this gold metallic. I think it's so pretty. And we've got a couple more layers to go here. So that's how the sheet looks. And I mentioned that we'll add 2 more layers, I think, here. So I'm adding a little bit more of the teal. Now I'm using my paintbrush to add a little bit more paint because sometimes it gets a little bit too translucent and you don't get the depth of color. So I'm just adding a little bit of extra paint to make it to intensify it and make it a little bit deeper. And it does a little bit of cover up on the paint that's below. I really like how these different layers overlap each other. It's kind of like a nice cool abstract. Okay, now I'm on to my last layer, and I'll just add some more of that orange. And see how when you kind of blow on it, you get sort of a brown there. I'm going to go back like I did with the teal, and I'll put a little extra paint on those sections there, see, just like that, so that is a little bit deeper and a little bit more intense, and it'll be more orange than brown. And then you can just add any additional strokes that you'd like to make it more interesting. And there I'm just adding to cover up and make it orange, not brown. And that'll just intensify the color a little bit. And that's what the final sheet looks like after it's dry. I think that's really cool. Now these Cool Tools jewelry shape templates are really nice, but you don't really need one. What I like about these is that I can see through it a little bit, and that way I can get a sense. But just like if I were doing a collage, I would look for the piece of the veneer, in this case the polymer clay veneer, that I really would like for the jewelry that I'm making. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. This will be my focal point, and this will be the pendant, and I'm just using that shape to cut it out with my craft knife. And I'll just smooth out the edge a little bit, the edges. And then I'm going to put it on this is a curved, just a vase, a round vase. It's probably about 2 or 3 inches, and it'll give this pendant a slight curve. It won't be a deep curve, but it'll be a slight curve. So I'm just applying that to the vase, and you can see these are all the other pieces I cut out. You can get a lot of different pieces. I've got earrings and other pendants that I was able to cut out from that one sheet of clay. We'll get that in the oven for 60 minutes. Be sure you tent it. And here it is. It's out of the oven. These pieces are looking really pretty. So we'll go ahead and take them off the glass. These other pieces I'll save for other projects. And here's the piece that I'm going to use in this particular project. Here's the back of it. I'm using the Genesis thick extender, the medium thick extender, and just applying that to the back. You could use liquid clay. I just like this particular, the Genesis, because it's not as slippery or as liquid as the liquid clay, so I like that. It's more of a gel type. And then I'm just going to cut off the excess with my craft knife. Turn that over, make sure I don't have any bubbles, and then trim off the excess. And I'll do this at sort of a 45-degree angle across the edge, and that's going to give me a nice finished look to the back. And the texture sheet is one that I love. I use this one all the time, and I'll have exactly which texture sheet that is in the description down below. So I'm just smoothing out the edge so that I can finish up that piece, finish up the back of it. I really like the back to look as nice as the front. And so just smooth it out a little bit, and then I will take the texture sheet and just retexture that edge a little bit so that there's uniformity of the texture all the way across the back. It's just real simple to press that texture on there. And finish the cleanup. Okay, so now I'm ready to put this back in the oven, and I have a, on the same vase, I just put a piece of paper, parchment paper, and some Scotch tape so that I didn't get any shiny spots on the back of my piece. and I'll get that in the oven for 60 minutes. Okay, the piece is out of the oven and you can see how nice that's looking. Now we're going to do some finishing up by adding a gold stripe around the edge, and I've got this Krylon pen and I'm just going to use it to quickly put a stroke of gold around the rim, and it'll really give it a nice frame. You do have to prime this Krylon pen by pumping it a little bit, and that way you can get a smooth stroke. I had to go over a little bit there. That's really not the best, so try not to do that because it can sort of make your edge a little bit less smooth. But try to make a clean, smooth stroke and be sure to prime it before you start. And that'll give it a nice finishing touch, a little sort of metallic look to the edge. Then I just used my hand drill to put a hole, and I have a pinch bail. You could use any kind of bail. You could use a jump ring if you don't have a pinch bail. And the way you open these is just to get your jewelry pliers, slip them in the center, and then extend them. And then you're able to slip that bail over and pinch it into the pinch the two prongs into the hole, and it'll hold that that pendant on there. I am going to use my plastic covered pliers to just pinch it shut a little bit more to make it a little bit tighter and a little more secure. And there you have it. That's the finished piece. It looks really pretty. I'm going to, in my next video, show you how to make this really fun beaded knotted necklace. And it's really a good spring look, and I really think that's a fun look. So I want to thank you for joining me in my studio. Please check out the next video where we'll make the necklace. I hope you've enjoyed this project. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing, giving me a thumbs up, or leaving me a comment. I'd really love to hear from you. Thanks again for joining me in my studio. Take care.